Okay, what's going on here? What are you up to, writers? You're definitely up to something. I've been stuck with this show for too long, and I've had to put up with way too much of your BS to fall for a trick like this. So either it was opposite day in Gotham City during this episode, or you clowns are hatching some kind of inane scheme. Either way, I'm not falling for it. Hit the intro. The episode begins in the most confusing way you could possibly imagine. So confusing that I had to pause it to check the DVR to make sure it didn't record the wrong episode by mistake. A white guy is running to catch a bus. It doesn't stop for him. He misses the bus. He's all pissed off. Then we cut to inside the bus where a young black kid is showing his friend something he found. It's some kind of weird canister. Then we're back outside watching the bus turn into a solid block of ice. And the angry white dude rejoices that he wasn't on the bus and escaped danger. So the white character is safe, and the innocent black character is almost certainly dead. I know, right? What's going on here? I checked the DVR a second time to make sure it recorded the right episode, and I still didn't believe it. And it won't be the first time the writers do stuff like this either. I have no idea what their angle is yet, but rest assured, they've got one. Because there's no way something like this is happening on Batwoman unless there's some kind of nefarious purpose behind it. Jada Jet is watching this on the news when Ryan comes in. There's the obligatory kissing of Ryan's ass as Jada marvels at how well Ryan turned out, even though she mentions a degree that Ryan doesn't have, so I'm not sure where her information's coming from. Ryan says there's no judgment and it's all good between them, but Jada cuts her off, saying that she's not interested in having a relationship. So Ryan gets defensive about that business of Jada paying millions of dollars to cover up the fact that Ryan's her daughter. In Jada's defense, I wouldn't want people knowing I was related to Ryan either. Jada doesn't really answer this, but says that if Ryan keeps trying to have anything to do with her or her family, she'd make Ryan and Wayne Enterprises regret it. Then a man walks in. This is Marcus, Jada's son and Ryan's brother. He's also the executive vice president of Jetorian Industries, and he looks exactly how you would think an executive vice president of a company with industries in the title on a CW show would look. Mid-20s, probably cast out of a modeling agency and dressed like he just came from the MTV Video Music Awards. Do they still do those? Who cares? So this situation is already powerfully dumb, but then again, I'm a fan of All Elite Wrestling, a real-life company whose real-life EVPs are these guys. So maybe it's not that far-fetched. But either way, it looks like Ryan complaining about her family is gonna be the A-plot of Season 3 for a while, so best get used to it. Back at the Wayne building, Ryan's complaining to Sophie about how Jada kept this kid while she gave Ryan away. Mary tries to console her because Ryan's fees are very important, but Ryan, refreshingly, is more concerned with their new case. The liquid in the canister was just normal liquid nitrogen, so the danger is not in the liquid but the canister itself, which, thanks to science, makes whatever's inside it more concentrated and more powerful. Don't think about it too much. While hashing this out, they head down to the Batcave, where they keep all their weapons and dangerous equipment and stuff, where the psychotic mass murderer Alice has once again been left completely unsupervised. Get used to that too. Alice says she's feeling weird from all the nanobots Luke injected into her last week, so she wants to call in sick. And no one believes her, of course, but Luke's like, f it, let her take the day off. We don't need her anyway, because I already know where the canister is. Cut to Batwoman breaking into the GCPD. Turns out the cops, who the show loves telling us every chance it gets are corrupt as hell, did something very unexpected. They took the canister from the crime scene and filed it away in the evidence room like real police. Confused yet? I don't blame you. So Batwoman breaks into the police department to find this canister instead of just, having Montoya check to see if it's there so she doesn't have to do all this illegal breaking and entering stuff. You figure it out. The records say the canister was filed there, but it's not there. Then we cut to an old lady who presents the canister to another old lady who, it turns out, is Nora Freeze. And no sooner do we meet her than some thugs burst into their home wanting to talk about how Nora was frozen for 20 years and lived to tell about it. So they're doing Mr. Freeze this week. Thankfully, there's very little the writers could do to embarrass him that Batman and Robin didn't do first, so I'm not really worried about that. Also, the writers seem to be on this weird kick where they want to use Batman's rogues gallery without actually using it. So every week, some rando will get a hold of one of his villain's weapons so they can reference that villain without the character actually appearing. Now, maybe that's a contractual thing, or maybe they just don't want to take the attention away from Poison Ivy when she shows up, but I'm more than okay with this. After seeing the way Hush and Black Mask were treated, the less often Batman's rogues gallery appear on this shit show, the happier I'll be. Cut back to the Batcave, where Luke has done all the detective work for Ryan off-screen and just gives her the bullet points. The old lady, Dee Smithy, works at the GCPD processing desk, so she'd have access to the evidence room, and she's also Nora Freeze's sister. So supposedly Mr. Freeze died at some point, and afterward the cryo chamber Nora was suspended in ran out of freeze juice and she thawed out. By this time there was a cure for her disease, so she got that, but she was so discombobulated from being on ice for 20 years that she was put in Arkham, an asylum for the criminally insane. Because that makes sense, right? Yeah, let's take this innocent woman who hasn't committed any crimes at all and is very confused about her surroundings and stick her in a nice comfy padded cell in between Alice and Killer Croc. I'm sure she'll fit right in with those people. This debriefing is interrupted when they notice Marcus on the security camera playing basketball in Bruce's office. You know, because basketball is a thing that black men do. The writers are really going the extra mile with this character. So Marcus did some snooping about Ryan, and he knows that she's his sister. And he didn't question this because he also knows that once upon a time his mom had a mysterious affair with a man who was not her husband and then disappeared for 9 months. Oh, Jesus Christ. They're really gonna do it, aren't they? Look, I realize that we're only 3 episodes in here and a lot can still happen, but honestly, if the big twist is not that Ryan is the daughter of Bruce Wayne, I'll be stunned. Like, genuinely stunned. Because that would make her the heir to the Wayne fortune and thus filthy stinking rich, because having 2 female billionaires on the show at one time is just not nearly enough. Naturally. Bruce, wherever you are, I hope to God that Kate never finds you. Because if this story is going where I think it's going, far, far, far away from Gotham is the absolute best place you can be. So apparently Jada doesn't really think that much of Marcus, and him being her EVP is just an honorary thing, so he wants to show her what he can do by going behind her back and partnering with Ryan after Jada made it very clear that she wanted Ryan nowhere near her or her family. I'm not sure how these 2 companies could form a partnership without the CEO of one of them knowing about it, but that's Marcus's plan. I think I'm starting to see why Jada doesn't take him seriously. And let me guess. The real reason why Jada wants nothing to do with Ryan is gonna be something really predictable and stupid. Like, she knew that Bruce was Batman and thought that Ryan being his daughter would only put her in danger, so the whole act is really to protect her or something? Tell me, writers, am I getting warm here? So Ryan tells him she'll think about it. As acting CEO, I'm not sure she'd have the power to make a call like that anyway, and then we get back to the less boring stuff. Batwoman's searching Dee Smithy's house. There's nobody there, but she does find a bunch of prescription meds, which makes her think that Nora's still sick. But Nora's technically a fugitive, so beats me how she's getting prescription meds, unless she's stealing them. And from there, her and Luke somehow deduce that the sister wants to put Nora back in a cryo chamber, even though the disease she went in there for originally has been cured. And well, wouldn't you know it, guys, the people who broke in and kidnapped Dee and Nora are also looking for a cryo chamber. So that's probably where they are now. And where's the nearest cryo chamber in Gotham? Ace Chemicals. What would a chemical manufacturer tied to the origin of the Joker be doing with cryogenics technology designed to freeze a human being? Your guess is as good as mine. Presumably the writers only put it in there for the callback, but that's a pretty random one to do in an episode where you're already doing it for Mr. Freeze. I hope to God a callback is all it is. Then we go to the illegal underground abortion clinic, which is still a thing for some reason, even though when last we heard they were talking about moving it to the community center, which everyone has just stopped talking about, by the way, and that's weird since last season it was pretty much the only thing they were talking about. And yes, even though Mary is officially a doctor now, God help us, she previously made it very clear that she was not going to be reporting bullet wounds to the proper authorities, so this is still very much an illegal underground abortion clinic. I'm so glad that Jacob-Mary storyline panned out, aren't you? For f***'s sake. Mary gives Alice a checkup and determines that there's nothing wrong with her. I failed to see how fresh out of med school Mary is qualified to diagnose how nanobots in the bloodstream might affect the human body, but she is. Somehow. Then she takes a minute to complain about Jacob, of course, and mentions how relieved she was when those postcards Jacob had been sending Alice were revealed to be just the product of Alice mashing up crazy pills and snorting them like cocaine. Mary does think Alice feigning an illness might be a cry for help, though, and says that since she's a doctor now, if Alice needs help, Mary has to give it to her. There it is again. You see it, right? There's a thing happening. The writers are doing something here. I still don't know what it is, but something about this episode is just off. All of a sudden, Mary is being a professional, offering Alice, who she hates with the petulance of a stubborn toddler, genuine medical care? No. Something is extremely wrong here. I mean, does that sound like Mary to you? Does it really? It would be one thing if this was actual character growth, but on this show, I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. And after the last 2+ seasons, can you really blame me? And because she's the only character self-aware enough to know what show she's on, Alice doesn't buy it either. She thinks this is all about Mary's savior complex, big old bullseye right there, and Mary's just compensating because she couldn't help Luke, who Alice thinks Mary totally has a crush on. And she knows all this because she read Mary's confidential files, which is what tends to happen when you leave Alice unsupervised, you dumbasses. Now, Mary writing her and Luke's names in little hearts all over her medical files, that sounds like some stupid shit Mary would do. Well spotted, Alice. Then the convo turns to how Mary really shouldn't bother telling Ryan about Luke's performance issues because Ryan would just ignore Mary because Team Batwoman don't really see Mary unless they need her for something. Just like Daddy and just like Kate. That little dig about Jacob is not true, but the one about Kate is certainly right on the money. Back to Ace Chemicals. The leader of the thugs who kidnapped Dee and Nora is a woman, probably a lesbian, with dyed red hair. I'm just gonna call her that because I don't think she actually got a name. The file on cryogenics looks like the indecipherable ramblings of a 12-year-old, so red-haired lady demands that Dee and Nora show her how this whole thing works. And Dee is somehow well-versed in cryogenics technology, despite the fact that she's a clerk at the police department. The less you think about that, the easier this is going to be. So while Batwoman's sneaking into the place, Nora has to explain to red-haired lady that the chamber doesn't really work. It'll freeze you just fine, but once you thaw out, your age catches up to you. 3 years ago, Nora came out of that thing a 34-year-old, and now she looks like she spent the following 3 years watching the CW's Batwoman. Those years have not been kind. Also, Dee wanted to put her back on ice until she found a way to slow the aging, which is also somehow in Dee's realm of expertise. I don't know. So Ryan drops in at that point. She fights off the male thugs, so easily you wonder why they even bother. She rescues Nora and tells her to go to the clinic because she hates Nora very much, I guess. And now that she's obliterated the male thugs, it's time for the main event. Batwoman versus red-haired lady, who whips out these collapsible batons, and of course, her and Ryan seem quite evenly matched, while the male thugs couldn't hit the ground fast enough. Not all of them, though. Ryan missed 1 or 2 of the male thugs, who interfere in the fight just long enough for red-haired lady to knock Ryan out from behind. How? Begging your pardon, writers, but you did spend the entire first season telling us that the Batsuit was made of the strongest material in the fucking universe and was so impact resistant that the person wearing it could get shot, blown up, smashed through brick walls, hit by trucks, and come out of it fresh as a daisy. And yes, all those things have happened, by the way. And now Batwoman's getting knocked unconscious by red-haired lady with a baton? I like seeing Batwoman getting knocked unconscious. I'd just like it a lot more if it actually made sense. So make a new addition to the list of the Batsuit's weaknesses, I guess. Now that list reads kryptonite, trumpets, bare fists, cattle prods, and sticks. Bullets just bounce right off the suit. But a stick, that can knock her out no problem. It's good that the suit has some weaknesses, but could you get any more random than this? I mean, this feels like they just wrote every random-ass word they could possibly think of up on a wall, closed their eyes, threw a dart, and whatever word the dart hit, that's what the suit's weakness is this week. In other words, the Batsuit's ultimate weakness is logic. Just like the show. Ryan wakes up inside the cryo chamber. Red-haired lady's boss or something wants to know the chamber works, but doesn't want to waste the liquid nitrogen, even though that stuff can't be too hard to come by. There's any number of labs in Gotham that would probably carry it. So without the liquid nitrogen, the chamber will just be blasting cold air, and Batwoman won't be frozen in suspended animation, she'll just die of hypothermia. Promises, promises. They turn the chamber on. Ryan calls Luke for help. Her core body temperature is dropping like a rock. He says that she has 10 minutes before she goes hypothermic, but at the rate I'm seeing, it won't take nearly that long. So Ryan tells Luke to suit up, but not to rescue her, to rescue Dee. And it's meant to make Ryan look really brave and self-sacrificing, which would be a nice moment for the character, except that her and Dee are in the same place. So the whole thing is just stupid because there's no reason why Luke can't save them both. Or so you'd think. For some reason, Luke thinks he can't leave the comms. He thinks he has to stay there to make sure Ryan stays awake, since if she nods off, it's game over. But it's only a matter of time before that happens if Luke doesn't do anything, so I'm not sure what they're doing here. Also, there's a comlink in the Batwing suit. You idiots! Over at the clinic, Mary's giving Nora a checkup, but Alice is bored now, so she takes a knife. She had easy access to them because these characters are idiots, puts it to Nora's throat, and threatens to kill her if Mary doesn't take the nanobots out of her blood right frickin' now. Because a back alley abortion clinic would have the equipment to do that, right? Whatever. But then Nora says to just go ahead and kill her. She's sick of people sacrificing themselves for her, and she's done with it. So, stab away, Alice. It's all good. And getting permission for the murder really takes the fun out of it, so Alice just gives up and fucks off. And Mary's like, what the hell's wrong with you? I was being nice. And Alice is all, you think I want nice? You think I want this whole stupid arrangement? And you being nice? No wonder I'm losing my mind. God! And I sympathize with her. I do. Because I don't know what the hell's going on either. Nora even relates to Alice, as messed up as that is. She's been trapped her whole life, and now she wants her freedom. Just like Nora. Dee's still putting a lot of her eggs in that cryo chamber basket, but Nora loves Dee too much to tell her that she wants to be done with all that. Jesus, even sisters are written like lesbians on this show. Back to Ryan. Sophie's on the comms now, and she keeps Ryan awake by telling her that Ryan hurt Sophie's feelings by not telling her how she really felt about her mom. I'm pretty sure Ryan did that in the last episode, actually. But the writers can't usually remember that far back, so retcon. So Ryan's about to fall asleep, but Batwing shows up, takes out all the thugs, and frees her just in time. What? Luke gets to do something cool. I still can't figure out what the writers are up to. This episode is breaking my brain! Apparently, Luke didn't hit red-haired lady very hard. She just jumps up, grabs Dee, and runs away. And Luke lets her go because he has to make sure Ryan's alright. I guess the Batwing suit doesn't have any range weapons on it. Seems like a weird thing to leave out. Anyway, once he sees to Ryan, they get up and go after the bad guys. Looks like it only took Ryan about 30 seconds to recover from near death. And now she's totally fine again. Even the ice is gone. So so car chase ensues, and I just have to laugh at this because every time they do one of these, the streets are just deserted. They're in the middle of the city, and there's maybe 2 or 3 cars on the road. It's just laughable. Anyway, they chase red-haired lady's car onto a bridge, and she drops a bomb to cover her escape. But she does it in the most nonsensical way possible. She climbs into the trunk, at which point the car is just driving itself somehow. She opens the trunk and drops the bomb out the back. You know, sweetie, you could have just tossed it out the driver's side window. So the Batmobile stops like 5 feet from the bomb. Then they cut to a different shot where the Batmobile is suddenly like 30 feet from the bomb before it starts backing up. Continuity, what's that? So the bomb explodes, it puts a huge hole in the bridge, and then another very strange thing happens. Ryan charges forward in the Batmobile, Luke flies out, uses the freeze canister to spray liquid nitrogen and plug the massive hole in the bridge with ice. The Batmobile engages the tire spikes and drives over it. And there was no virtue signaling, no bullshit politics. It was just 2 crime fighters working as a team, thinking on their feet, and doing a competent thing while chasing a bad guy. It sounds pathetically simple, but I cannot even count how many times this show has gotten that very simple formula completely fucking wrong. And sure, it was ridiculous, not to mention unnecessary, because Luke could have just flown ahead and stopped red-haired lady by himself without Ryan risking the Batmobile ending up at the bottom of the river. But I was just so flabbergasted that they managed to pull off this stunt without doing that much to annoy me. I almost wanted to give Ryan and Luke a pat on the back for this one. Almost, but I didn't. And I was right not to, because it immediately falls apart. Red-haired lady is still in the trunk, shooting at the Batmobile and yelling at someone to hurry up because the Batmobile's gaining on them. But I don't know who she's yelling at because no one is driving the fucking car! They clearly showed us that red-haired lady and Dee were the only ones in there! We can see that there's no one in the driver's seat! The car is driving itself! Who is she talking to? So Ryan finally stops red-haired lady's car with the grappling hook. They quickly cut to a shot inside the car, and suddenly there is someone in the driver's seat, just for a split second. Then red-haired lady drags Dee out of the car, and suddenly the person in the driver's seat is gone again. She's got a gun on Dee, another car drives up, she gives up the hostage, jumps in the other car, drives off, and Ryan and Luke let her leave. They could just keep chasing after her and catch her again, but they don't. So after the first moment in a fucking blue moon that actually made me feel like I was watching a real show about costume crime fighters in the Bat family here, they flushed it down the shitter and reverted to form instantly. What a fucking disaster this scene is. She's right there, driving away. Just chase after her, you jackasses! Oh my god! Afterward, Alice gets thrown back in Arkham. Again, the terms of her release are getting more vague with each passing week, and for a second she can see all the nanobots under her skin, but it isn't clear if that's another delusion or not. So they deposit the canister back in the cave, at which point Mary decides to come clean and tell Ryan that Luke disabled the Batwing suit's failsafe. A failsafe which seemed counterintuitive since Luke wasn't supposed to wear the suit unless he was ready. And that still doesn't make sense because the whole point of a failsafe is to keep you safe when you fail. It's in the fucking name. And all this failsafe did was put Luke in danger. So who the cares if he disabled it? Also, you're making a lot of assumptions there, Mary. Isn't it more likely that the suit was just glitching because Lucius hadn't worked the kinks out before he died? I mean, why would he design a failsafe that would leave the person wearing the suit completely fucking helpless? So after she momentarily toyed with the idea of acting like an adult earlier, Mary's right back to being an idiot again and says that she should not have cleared Luke for field duty. But Ryan correctly points out that Luke kind of saved her ass tonight. Mary's like, you don't have PTSD. And Luke's like, hello, I don't have PTSD. And I'm with Luke on this. He's shown 0 signs of PTSD since the episode where Dig showed up in season 2. So I don't know what Mary's basing this on. Not to mention the fact that since he turned off the failsafe, Luke's performance in the field has only improved because now he's wearing a battle suit that actually works. So the only thing Mary has to go on here is the medical data provided by a suit that was malfunctioning functioning up until last week! So Ryan says they'll keep an eye on it, but in the meantime, she needs Luke in the field with her because, you know, he just saved her life. Luke is mad at Mary for telling Ryan about this. Meanwhile, I'm wondering that if this is really such a big issue, why don't they just put Sophie in the Batwing suit until Luke sorts out his imaginary PTSD? It's a suit of armor. It's not like Luke is the only person who can wear it. I'm not saying I want that to happen. F that noise. But logically, why is it not an option? I don't know. Later at the gay bar, which seems to morph into a coffee bar during the day somehow, Sophie finds Ryan there. Ryan tells her about Marcus wanting them to work together behind Jada's back, and then they proceed to have pretty much the exact same conversation they had last week. What do you want, Ryan? I just want a mom. Well, it's her loss. They're just recycling the same verbiage here. However, it does end with Ryan deciding that since Jada's one of the most connected people in Gotham, making her an enemy puts everyone she cares about at risk. Somehow. So as much as she might be tempted by this idea, Ryan's going to put Team Batwoman first and just steer clear of this bitch. So Ryan is ignoring what she wants in order to keep other people safe, which seems like the smart, responsible thing to do. What the f*** are the writers up to? What's their angle here? I can't figure it out. So Mary meets Dee and Nora in the park somewhere, gives Nora some meds for the pain that Nora never once mentioned, and says that Batwoman pulled some strings so the cops won't be coming after her. I don't know why they'd be after her at all, since her only crime, as far as I could see, was escaping from an asylum she shouldn't have been in the first place. At least Dee committed theft. But why the f*** is Nora a fugitive? So Nora finally tells Dee that she's been dying her whole life, so she just wants to take the time she has left to actually live. Dee seems to accept that, and then some plant vines grab Mary by the legs and drag her into the bushes, teasing that poison ivy is about to show up. But you sure as hell wouldn't know it by the promo for next week's episode, which was all about Sophie meeting Marcus of all things. Because that's what the Bat fans are dying to see. Good call, Caroline Dries. You really got your finger on the pulse of the audience there. This episode was kind of in the same vein as the last one, in that it wasn't really offensive. It was just incredibly lame and stupid. Of course, its biggest offense was wasting any potential it might have had when you throw Mr. Freeze's technology into the mix. You could do so much cool stuff with that, pun intended, and they used it twice in the whole episode. They were more interested in the kidnapping plot with red-haired lady, and we didn't even learn why the hell she was doing all this. Now, there were moments, very brief moments, where it almost seemed as if the writers were attempting to put their normal politics and stupidities aside and just sort of tried to make a TV show. Granted, they didn't try very hard, but either those moments were a fluke, or the writers are setting us up for some kind of asinine surprise that hasn't been revealed yet. I still don't know what kind of game they're playing, but I'm watching them like a hawk. But all things considered, as bad as this episode was, it could have been worse. We've seen how it could be worse. Trust me, if you think this was as bad as Batwoman gets, you must be new here. Nora Freeze was inoffensive. Luke was given a little appreciation, minus the performance issues remark. Ryan made some choices which show that even though you might want to smack her upside the head most of the time, she's still a step up from Kate. And Mary was... well, she was still an idiot, but what else is new? Now, don't get me wrong, it still sucked a golf ball through a garden hose. But if the baseline for agony when watching Batwoman is here, then this episode was maybe around here. So it was just as awful as we've come to expect, but maybe slightly less excruciating in a handful of moments, though I can't imagine that's gonna last long. So yeah, don't let it lull you into a false sense of security, because Poison Ivy's debut seems to be imminent now, which means the writers are about to sink their filthy claws into one of the classic Batman villains and do God knows what to her. The only hope we have is that Bridget Regan pulls a Rachel Scarston here and manages to create something watchable despite the writers' best efforts to f*** this character in the ass. Best of luck, Bridget. You're gonna need it. Thanks everyone for watching. Sound off on this video in the comments, ding the bell icon, and follow my social media to always be notified when I upload new stuff. Links to that and to my live streaming channel are down below. Thumbs up the video, share, subscribe, make sure you're still subscribed, and I'll be back with more soon. So stay tuned for that, do all the YouTube things, and I'll see you next time.